Oh man, that okay, so Cap, I'm new to Cap. I used to use Loom, and now Cap is an open source version, and it's, so I just accidentally clicked stop on that last video, and then it took a number of minutes to process. But I'm gonna upload that video. I'll link to the second video. Anyway, I read this part. An information blog post will display the information at the top of the page to reduce unnecessary scrolling. Anyway, I just wanted to show we have that in scroll. If I click format file, so every line, every block is kind of ranked by importance, and I click format file, and that's going to move that thing way down south. And of course, like if I put, name is very important. If I put this down here and I click format file, it's going to move back to the top. So we just kind of had that built in. Additionally, the post should have a clear title that states the content of the page. That way the reader can know what to expect before visiting the page and quickly accessing the information. Information blogging network. The IB network is the totality of information blogs that are connected to the wider collection of IB on the internet. As of writing this essay, the IB does not exist, so we can only speculate as to how it would be. At the macro level, I imagine the network would consist primarily of IB directories. Some directories would contain many types of IBs, while others would have certain requirements for inclusion. Some directories would include all IBs that use a particular guideline, standard, or criteria. Other directories would include all blogs from authors with a certain academic qualification. There would also be directories that include blogs from a specific organization, institution, or government. In addition to directories, the network would include search engines that provide results from all IBs or a subset of IBs. While the directories would be focused on organizing information, the search engines would focus on retrieving information. The following sections will introduce 3 methods, 1 guideline, 1 standard, 1 criteria, that could be used within the IB network. These are only 3 suggested methods, do not constitute the entirety of possible IB techniques. Okay, the guidelines method, example of templates and goals for displaying IBs on a blog post. Introduction paragraph of the post should include at least one of the templates. There are 5 templates and 3 goals listed below. So it's just like a standard, right? Guideline, standard, and criteria. Okay. Post collection of, timeline of. Okay, yeah, so you're basically defining a language and saying the following post is going to meet this language. It's going to be written in this language. Minimalism and clarity, agreed with that. Standardizations, okay. Network, typically an IMG post. And so, and then the one thing that I think is important is to just allow for wit and whimsy, like allow for people to go anywhere with their posts when they're writing it. It doesn't always have to fit into a template. Basically, try to support both use cases of completely free form content, but then also completely structured content, and make the language kind of support both. Because then it's just more fun to use, because you never know the order. I don't know. It's just practical, I think. Typically, an IBG post will consist of a short intro paragraph followed by a list or collection. One of the templates will form the basis of the first paragraph. Sometimes a photo will be included at the top of the page. Primary goal is to make a web page that's concise and simple. Because IBG set up guidelines rather than a standard, variation, experimentation outside is encouraged. Yes, agreed. There's not an objective line that says whether or not a blog post is following. Okay, it's normal for blogs to include additional sentences to not follow the templates. So in scroll, it's basically like, this is a title. This is a catch-all paragraph. So, and if we were to show how we parse this, we can say debug, inspect entire document, right? So we'll show you how this works. So this first line is parsed by the blank line parser. The second line is parsed by the H1 parser. Third is blank line parser. And then the fourth is the catch-all paragraph parser. Now we could turn this into a list. Maybe a list, an item. And here we go. Now it's a, so we're going to say that this is now a list. but basically just showing the different ways to do things. Maybe a better example would be something really structured, like a date parser versus this. Right? So this is a date parser, right? So this is specifically a date atom. So versus a catch-all parser. So both are valid, but this one lets us know that, hey, this is a date, so it's structured. Anyway, because IBG set of guidelines rather than a standard, variation experimentation is encouraged. Okay. The purpose of this guideline, the important aspect, at least one of the templates are used, and I think one of the templates can be kind of the catch-all template. Purpose of the guidelines is to provide a center of gravity for information blog posts to aim for. This enables multiple blogs to make compatible posts and contribute to a larger information project while existing on separate URLs. Love it. Below is an example of the IBG method. List of the 13 colonies. This post lists of 13 colonies. These colonies later became the original 13 states, the US. 13 colonies listed below. You've got your source. All right, so you've got an enum of different colonies. Collection of the principles of relativity. Okay. So I would almost say, like, so I think things, you should start with experimental data and then far down. So you'd start with like mathematical formulas, experimental data, and then far down you get to something like relativity. So that this isn't a kind of a, because otherwise these are statements, but they're not really logically connected to anything else. But if you included experiments like the solar eclipse data from that solar eclipse experiment, and Max Planck's experimental data, and all these, all of these like minimal reproducible experiments, well, now you can see how you can kind of verify this stuff. Minimalism and clarity are listed together as a goal because simple web pages are more effective at communicating information than confusing web pages. The goal, minimalism and clarity are listed together. I mean, simple web pages are more effective at communicating information than confusing web pages. We can also say that often video is more effective than web pages for explaining information. I mean, I agree with this. I'm just thinking about this statement. Anyway, the goal is purposefully open-ended because there are multiple ways to achieve minimalism and clarity. Roughly speaking, the goal aims to reduce unnecessary content and help the reader focus on what is important. I like that. IBG can also be used to organize all posts on a single blog or website. For example, my blog used the IBG method with homepage and all subdirectories. I believe this makes it easier for readers to find all my posts on a specific topic. A replica of the homepage of my blog is provided below. 2,100 posts. So it's like a knowledge graph. Belief analysis list rows displaying the structure of a belief. Belief analysis. There are 6 rows listed below. State the belief using a single sentence at the top of the page. List reasons to support the belief. State each reason with a short sentence. Okay, so I would maybe talk about this as kind of experiments. I don't know. Example, are humans contributing to global warming? I believe humans are contributing to global warming. This post collection of reasons. So yeah, I wouldn't take scattered facts. I think you have to build from the ground up. You have to build a logical system. So we have to talk about what is temperature, what is the earth. We need thermometers and how we measure temperature, and all the various techniques to get historical measurements of temperature, information on kind of the sun, and it's a very, I think it's a very before you can have a strong I think to have a strong opinion on global warming, one needs to have quite a large, sophisticated model of the Earth, which really is probably would run to like 1,000,000 pages. I don't even know. But that's a very challenging question. You could have a lot of, otherwise it's kind of a lot of weaker arguments, in my opinion. I mean, you could come up with some killer argument and then not find, and then have a model that you build alongside that and see if you can try to disprove your argument as you build the model. And if you don't see any things coming forward in the model that challenges it, well, then you might have something. So anyway, information is an optimization problem. When making a blog post or web page, one can think of info as an optimization problem based on 4 criteria: minimization of text, maximization of relevant information, clarity, accuracy. Yeah, I would say I call this X. X, where's X? Intelligence. So, intelligence of a program or a blog post, say, is the coverage of that post. So how much does it predict divided by the size of the post in bits? So if you think about predictions, okay, does this blog post explain how much of the universe does this blog post explain? Or this piece of content explain? And then how many bytes to represent that content? So it's just one measure. It seems similar. Minimization of text, maximization of relevant information, prediction, clarity, accuracy. I like it. General principle for iBlogs and synonymous with the word concise. I like it. A set of criteria orients a post toward the most efficient way to display information on page, measured by the amount of text, the amount of important information, clarity, and correctness. Because the 4 criteria are often opposed to each other, they should be balanced for optimal results. If a blog post removes critical nuance or words, it would be an improvement for minimizing the text, but could potentially diminish the accuracy of the post. Yes. Sometimes it makes sense to remove words that don't contribute anything. Yep. Another example, if a post condenses important information into Greek symbols, this would be an improvement for minimizing the text, but also diminish the clarity of the post depending on the audience. An expert reader was familiar with the symbols would probably have no less in clarity. So, yeah, I think this is saying like there is going to be, every post assumes a group of imports, and so if you swap, and so you might switch to Greek letters, and you're removing some imports, but that might not be logical anymore, and so for certain people. I think it's kind of objective. I think if you have a strongly typed language, a strongly parsed language, then I think it's objective. Potential benefits, strongly parsed. I'm gonna write that down, as opposed to just strongly typed. Strongly parsed. Anyway, potential benefits of IB. Part of the essay describe how IB could be beneficial for society and users of the internet. It can be difficult to explain the purpose of IB with a single answer because it simultaneously addresses multiple problems. Below the 6 potential benefits discussed in this part of the essay. Organize the world's information. That's a big one. Unite websites, create useful and interesting web pages, make difficult info comprehensible to laypersons, help opposing sides in an argument understand each other more clearly, improve humanity's ability to coordinate on collective issues. I wonder if I should pause this, break this up into 3 videos. Well, I'm not really sure what CAP is going to do. Let's just keep going for it. IB can organize the world's information. Why is it useful to organize? Simple is it without organizing? By definition, you have a mess of information, which is synonymous with chaos, disorder, and confusion. Comes to the world's information. I do not think chaos and confusion is a good thing, okay? Organizing information can be beneficial in multiple ways. Make difficult subjects more clear to readers, make arguments easier to understand, help groups of people coordinate, help collaborators. I believe Wikipedia is limited in its ability to organize information. particular concept has a few sections to organize information about that concept, a consistent formula across Wikipedia encyclopedias in general. The problem is that the encyclopedia articles, which represent an entire concept, is too broad to be an effective base unit for organizing information. It's weakly parsed. Imagine organizing a list of Wikipedia articles into categories. It doesn't make sense to organize the list of concepts and call that organizing information. The name of a concept doesn't possess enough information, meaningful information. To organize information, I believe it should be done at the chunk level. And what is the minimum chunk level? I would say the word. And you'd have a linking of bits to words. We can unite websites, improve the network. Most websites exist in isolation rather than being connected. Hub and spoke. The most prominent examples of the web: blogosphere, RSS standards. Besides blog rows, most blogs act independently from each other. Yes. Every blogging website pursues its own goals. Yes. The web model blogosphere exists, but it's not very strong. Instead, we have an internet with millions of blogs, varying popularity and associations, but the actual web model appears non-existent or irrelevant. I can't point to a blog or place on the internet that I would consider as a useful way to access the web model of the blogosphere. I'd argue that without regard to a shared project or goal, blogs and websites naturally go in different directions. Yeah, I agree. When an individual makes an IB post, they're essentially taking an informational snapshot of something to be displayed to the public. This way, informational blogging can be seen as both an art project and an information project. IB has the ability to display information in ways never before seen to the public, to the reader. People have info in their heads. How many times have they seen that info clearly stated on a page? That is beautiful. That is the beauty of information blogging. Creating directories, curated lists of content. IB is a way to make online museums and galleries. IB is considered to be explored. Can make difficult information comprehensible. I think one interesting thing is like, now let's take relativity, right? So say we wanted to show this to the layperson. Well, relativity includes quite a lot. We're going to have to start with numbers, but before that, we're going to have to include binary. I think everything kind of starts with binary. And then we have measurements, and then we're going to have geometry. In geometry, first, that's going to include triangles. Basically, there's now relatively, we're going to need space-time. So let's have Cartesian coordinates in there to start with. Then let's have light. We're going to need light. To have light, we're going to need frequency. To have frequency, do we already have time? We don't have time yet. We don't have time. We're going to need Planck's constant. Planck's constant. We're going to need to have that. We're going to need heat. To have that, we're going to need, anyway. Basically, if we do it correctly, if we organize information topologically, then the layperson could be like, well, okay, I could either understand what relativity is by understanding all the components and then see how it's built up out of those lower level components. Or yeah, they could just get and that would be a first principles understanding of it, or they could just get in the metaphor understanding of it. So what I like about that is then it's something that the experts would have the full thing, and the layperson could also look at the full thing and be like, well, is it really worth it for me to have a detailed understanding of relativity, or could I just, because they could actually see and they would understand the simple language of like, oh yeah, I know that this thing might include a ton of files, numbers might include, base numbers, base 10, whatever, and then addition and subtraction, etc. And then, or maybe those would be in a different arithmetic section or whatever. But basically, they could just estimate. Oh, I see what relativity is built on, and then, even if they don't know the details of everything, they can kind of like see the, if I look at a skyscraper, I can be like, oh, I can, I see that floor 100 is built on the prior 99 floors. You might just want to go up to floor 100 without studying each floor, but it's nice to be able to see the logical progression and to know that floor 100 depends on every one of those floors underneath it. And you knock out one of those floors, the whole thing falls down. So there's nice requiring topological sorting, which Wikipedia doesn't do. I think creates some external laws that must be followed, which I think are important. Sorry, we're design. Okay, sorry. This is where we were. The design of IB is meant to make very simple web pages that can be easily understood. Okay, more core principles can stand out to the reader. Imagine a culture of bloggers and websites devoted to the principle. Bloggers would collect. I love that. Yeah. How do we make a community around this? That's the challenge. Bloggers would collect and organize what they believe to be the best examples of this. Different authors would create posts, like that try to be more accurately elucidate difficult concepts. Love it. It's possible that such a network would build off of itself to create ever-improving educational websites and web pages. Love it. IAB can serve as a framework to collect and organize the best explanations, quotes within the limits of fair use and legality. Within the limits of finding multiple quotes is a task and all the difference when learning a subject. When it comes to education, we cannot be satisfied with vague and complete answers. There's no limit to how effective an explanation can illuminate difficult concept. Additionally, it would be useful to see how an expert organizes chunks of information on a topic. This would allow the reader to clearly see the basic building blocks along which chunks establish the framework for more advanced topics. Love it. Awareness of the structure of a field of knowledge is knowledge itself. Love that. Awareness of the structure of a field of knowledge is knowledge itself. Yes. I believe the best way to dissect difficult information is to break it into smaller steps or chunks. This can be compared to trying to climb a wall with an easy climbing holds. Every chunk is something definite to hold on to. The alternative is to read a wall of text or listen to a monologue. When reading dense paragraphs, every sentence has equal weight and they can blend together. Using the climbing analogy, this can be seen as a wall with less defined climbing holds. Reading books is great for the mind, but I do not think dense text is the best way to eliminate difficult material. Information blogging can help opposing sides in an argument understand each other more clearly. IB can be designed to make debates and arguments more organized and clear. Standards can be created to limit the amount of reasons or sentences used. Belief analysis is an example of a standard designed for this purpose. Belief analysis is limited to no more than 5 reasons, no more than 3 sub-reasons. This way, the reader can more efficiently understand what a person believes and why. Alternatives have arguments that are monologues filled with rhetoric and persuasion tactics. Yes, I like this. Basically, this is saying this type of system can be used to get to truth, shared truth, or at least understanding of the other person's truth. This is very, very clear and logical essay. Also, no typos. Was this written by an LLM? Belief analysis can help us identify flaws in belief. By holding the argument still in a controlled system, we can more accurately see where the reasoning evidence is weak or wrong. Using this method, it's easier to point to a specific sub-reason than to point to a sequence of paragraphs. A specific point in question would be a separate belief analysis. Information IB can improve humanity's ability to coordinate on collective issues. Information should be organized and clear to everyone. Under such a framework, various opinions and solutions can be organized in public view. Trusted curators organize the discussion, making it accessible to readers. Humanity could improve its ability to deliberate on collective issues and determine the right course of action. The alternative is for humanity to persist in our current environment characterized by chaos and information overload. Across the board, in many issues, humanity appears divided and unable to coordinate on public issues. To address this problem, we need a system to bring multiple voices together in a format that's simple, clear, and organized. I like it. Potential risks. Potential risks. Cannot predict the full impacts. All right. Misinformation, disinformation, impersonation. Increasing political polarization, access to dangerous knowledge, reduced attention spans, oversimplification. well. Conclusion. I'm going to skip over the risks for now. This essay has discussed the current state of organizing information on the internet, provided a description of information blogging, proposed 3 methods. We do not have a good system for organizing information. Correct. Wikipedia is great for collecting objective information, but it cannot incorporate personal views and opinions. Feeds and search engines results are too transient for establishing an organized structure. Google and large language models are amazing retrieval tools, but they do not organize information. We should work toward building the IB using IBG and other methods. The purpose of the frameworks to organize one's information, provide a way for websites to work together on a shared project. List of, okay. So, yeah, so I think we're just so in alignment on this. So like scroll sets, source code for CSVs. So okay, so here's how you would represent this information. So like Mercury, Venus, Earth, etc. Here's Earth, years to orbit Sun. So I have it in years 1, but I think you've got it in days or whatever. So, but here's Mercury, and anyway, and then basically the idea is you have these parsers above included first, which kind of tell you how to parse that information. So, anyway. A lot of examples here. References. Cool. Well, that was enjoyable. And I'll send you this link. Thank you, Alex. I think we've got a lot of similar ideas. Cheers.